Hello, my name is Charles Upton, and this is another in my series of little videos I'm doing on different books, most of which I wrote, some of which are written by other people. This particular book I'm doing now was written by myself and my wife, Jennifer Doan Upton. It's called Shadow of the Rose, the Esoterism of the Romantic Tradition. Now, the title of this piece, as you've seen, is Heterosexual Metaphysics. So I thought I'd put that title in because it sounds vaguely subversive, you know. Heterosexual metaphysics, eh? What are they up to? Well, what they are up to is the understanding that the gender goes to the heart of existence. Gender is born in God. It's a much deeper reality than we can imagine when we only think of it in biological or social terms. And that's what romance is. It is literally the metaphysics of gender, of heterosexual love. And when I talk about romance, I'm not talking about the romantic poets like Keats or Shelley or their German friends, but about the world that's expressed in the medieval romances, like those of Wolfram von Eschenbach and Chrétien de Troyes, and certainly in the Divine Comedy of Dante Alighieri. Romance, in that sense, was born in the West when archaic Celtic material married with influences coming in from Arabia and Persia through Islam. And one was like alchemical quicksilver, the other like alchemical sulfur. And these married, but they married within the vessel of Christendom, which is the only place this marriage could have taken place. It's as if the officiating priest in the marriage of the Celtic material and the Persian Arabic material was Jesus Christ. I pronounce you man and wife, he said. So let me read you the first paragraph here, give you an idea of what I'm up to. Human love has fallen on hard times. It has been officially discredited. Even liberal humanitarianism is not what it used to be. How then can romantic love, which in its origins is essentially aristocratic, in Meister Eckhart's sense when he said that the soul is an aristocrat, find any place in today's world? The truth is, it cannot. The world is too small for it. The place of romantic love is nowhere in this world. Its place is in the human soul, whose own proper place is in the eternal self-knowledge of God. Because that's where gender began, when God first contemplated himself, as it were, as another. That's where two was born. And this is talked about in Genesis when it says the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. That's how deep gender goes. So, I'm going to read you a little poem here by Abul Hassan ibn al-Qabturnu, who was a Spanish Muslim poet, medieval poet. And this is in Lysander Kemp's translation. This is 6 lines that put the essence of romance, as far as I can see, the ethos of love and war, into 6 lines. I remembered Sulaiman when the passion of battle was as fierce as the passion of my body when we parted. I thought I saw among the lances the tall perfection of her body, and when they bent toward me, I embraced them. And I say this: the way of romantic love requires of a man that he put his love for his beloved beyond all other earthly values, including social acceptance and economic security. It requires the same thing of a woman, but in a different mode, one that has more to do with endurance and invocation than with exploit, though women too must be ready to fight and men to endure. It commands him to go to war against the dragon of this world, both within his psyche and in terms of outer circumstances. To love romantically is to risk all: power, prestige, life itself, the whole spectrum of worldly ego-based values, for the sake of love. Though as C.S. Lewis reminds us, when we are tempted to sacrifice otherworldly spiritual values for the sake of romantic love, then that love has become idolatrous. This is quite literally a life and death struggle that demands total dedication. It is not a path for everyone. A man's love for his lady is a symbol of his love for God, and since ultimately we are nothing other than symbols of that one, there is a sense in which what the Sufis call figurative love, love on the human plane, is a full theophanic manifestation of divine love. If all sensible and intelligible realities are figures and symbols, then the symbol of the thing, while never ceasing to be a symbol, is necessarily the very presence of the thing itself. So I'll quickly go through this. This is called the 9 mirrors of romance. These are the 9 basic elements of romance, as I see it. One is the beloved hard to attain, which you see in the romances that the knight has to go through terrible struggles and be wounded in war and be humiliated socially and all this to reach her. This is because the beloved is a symbol of God, and only God has the right to make such demands. Courtesy is a second. Courtesy has to do with delicacy of feeling, which has been entirely thrown out in our present society and trampled upon and spit upon. And it's the understanding that human dignity is intrinsic to all of us, whether or not we are faithful to it. If we're faithful to it, it's our ally. If we betray it, we still cannot discard it, get rid of it. It becomes a curse. It becomes our judge and our judgment. Next is chivalry, which I say chivalry, and this is obvious, everyone knows this has to do with romance. Chivalry is the use of overt or implied war-making power to defend what needs and deserves defending. It is based on the recognition that power is not a value in itself except to a barbarian, that only for the defense of values other than war does war have a right to exist. Chivalry relates to the defense of the weak, the socially weak, a duty which has everything to do with romantic love, since the ability to regard, to truly see those who are repressed and discounted by the world is essential if we are to love without vanity and worldly ambition. The next one is adultery. In the medieval romances and in the troubadour ethos, adultery was a big deal. True love was always adulterous. And what does this mean? Well, it was considered that marriage represented a marriage to the world, to worldly values, whereas only by betraying, social position and social propriety could true love come about. This is a dangerous point because, on the other hand, we have to understand now that what really violates the social mores is marriage. A loving marriage is the most subversive thing conceivable in a world like this. It's an act of war. Next. 5, youth. That's obvious, because romance has to do with youth, and youth is beyond just being young. It means responsiveness to the moment. Okay. Fairy. Well, that's the mysterious other dimension, a subtle dimension in which romance often takes place. Then there's Gnosticism. Well, Gnosticism is a heresy as far as I'm concerned, but there was one thing the Gnostics were good at, which is psyching out the agendas and the operating protocols of the rulers of the darkness of this world, and this is necessary if romance is to be defended. I call Gnosticism at one point, this is only my definition, and it's the intelligence wing of the greater jihad. 8 is alchemy. Alchemy is the intermarriage of masculine and feminine within the soul. We think when that happens, the personality becomes androgynous. Not so. When masculine and feminine marry within the heart, then masculine and feminine, men and women, can relate and unite in the outer world. And 9 is the visionary beloved, because in essence, the woman we love, or the man we love, but I say the woman we love, since I am a man, is a vision. She exists in another world penetrating this world. There's an element of eternity about her. We see this with Dante and his Beatrice in the Divine Comedy. So now I'm just going to read a little bit of what my wife wrote. This is by Jennifer Doan Upton. This is from High Romance and the Spiritual Path. She says, high romance is a quality of feeling that participates in the higher spiritual realities. It draws its life from the eternal, not the timely. High romance begins with human feeling, but far from stopping at the human level, this feeling goes on to higher spiritual worlds. Human love, in some sense, meets its death at the birth of divine love, but in another way it lives on through that very death as a symbol of that higher love. High romance involves passion and discipline. In a situation of either dry scholarship or sentimentality, there is no place for high romance. If high romance were present, the scholarship would be passionate and the emotions disciplined. High romance is feeling oriented toward truth, toward knowledge. While we are contemplating the realities high romance points to, however, we must be humble enough to accept the human level, which alone makes an understanding of the spiritual level possible to us. That's pretty succinct. I'll end with two poems by her. First is The Return, the second is The Rain in the Desert. The Return. You who I thought was so far away, you are now standing in my door. Look at me. Since you went away, I too have become life and death. The dead child I have put into the earth, and the living one I have hidden away. The dishes I meant to set the table with when you came back are cracked now, and I can no longer buy electricity. But come and eat upon this bright tablecloth, for toward evening the sun makes this whole house glow. And always toward evening I see you as I saw you 5 years ago, about to leave and about to come back to me in a single step. We had just buried the dead child, and the living child which you never knew, I am still hiding. And this, The Rain in the Desert. This is my nightmare, she said to the strange one, the beloved. Watch it come upon me like the rain which comes into the desert and floods it. How can I, who have no home, promise to give one to you, I who am walking to where the roads change? She who had been too asleep to remember the strange one, the beloved, and what he said, now wakes up saying, this is a day which comes early in my life.